Kong in the trunk. King Kong, King Kong, King Kong.
I'm back. Rhodes Rants with another horror podcast. We are doing these horror podcasts are informal videos, and they tend to be longer. And what we are currently doing, we started it out by doing a Patreon requested Friday the 13th rank. Shout out to my Patreon, Kyle. Check out my Patreon, patreon.com/Rhodes Rants. Even $1 a month helps the channel a ton, and it's much appreciated, especially in light of the political content on the channel, generally speaking, getting demonetized each and every time I put up a video. And unfortunately, they're the best performing videos on the channel. Thanks, YouTube. Okay, so we have done the countdown. It started at 12. Number 12 was A New Beginning. Number 11 was Jason X. Number 10 was Jason Takes Manhattan. Number 9 is Jason Goes to Hell. This is the first Friday the 13th movie, and I want you to notice something about these New Line films. Jason Goes to Hell, The Final Friday. Jason X. Freddy versus Jason. Nowhere in the title is Friday the 13th, and it's because New Line bought the character Jason Voorhees, but did not buy the naming rights to Friday the 13th. That's right. Which is interesting. You know, that in itself is interesting. They wanted the character of Jason Voorhees. You may be like, well, why did they want the character? It was for the eventual showdown with Freddy Krueger. That is why they bought the Jason character. Now, you may be like, well, Rhodes, the remake in 2009, it was a joint venture brought together by Brad Fuller and Michael Bay's Platinum Dunes production company, in conjunction with Paramount Pictures and New Line, both. That's why they were able to call it Friday the 13th. So they both got a kickback on it. And Paramount actually reacquired the rights for a while, and right now it's in lawsuit hell, Friday the 13th. Jason Goes to Hell was the first Jason Voorhees film for New Line Cinema, who had, up until that point, been the home of Freddy Krueger, played by the great Robert Englund. Now, I'll tell you, Jason Goes to Hell was actually, I will say this is one of those times where theater experience helps. And what is so odd is this is the second worst grossing Jason Voorhees film ever. But to tell you how Jason Voorhees is received in Texas, I went to see this opening night, a group of about 5 or 6 of us, all my friends. We were fired up. Jason Voorhees is back. And this is the final one. It said, the creator of the first brings you the last, was the tagline. Sean S. Cunningham was involved. Adam Marcus, who had been involved with the original Friday the 13th, came back and to direct. Okay? And so there was a lot of, Jason's going to hell this time. It's over. It's over. The tagline, evil has finally found a home. We go to the theater. We get there about 30 or 40 minutes early. This thing is sold out already. And there is a line wrapped around the theater. So we bought tickets for the following showing, like a 9:30, I guess, or 9 or 9:30, whatever. We get back, theater is packed, sold out again. So that just tells you, opening night here in Texas, The second worst grossing Friday the 13th movie had all showings sold out. We love some horror movies. We love Jason here in rural Texas. I assure you. There's something about the narrative of killer in the woods. We're in the piney woods. And there's something sort of scary about that whole situation involving Jason, right? And the whole narrative. I live out on a community lake. And what I will tell you is at night, it looks just like Crystal Lake. It looks just like Crystal Lake. And sometimes I go and take the dogs down to walk at night, and the fog is rolling in, and I'm like, wow. But let's save that story for a future review. Now, there are some really positives to this movie. And you might be like, well, why is this movie way down at 9? There is one singular reason why this movie is where it is in the ranking. And it ties back to A New Beginning, where we had the imposter Jason. In this movie, Jason is actually a supernatural being. He is supernaturally powered by what's called the Hell Baby. And you might be like, the Hell Baby? There is a demon-like creature that looks a little bit like a serpent / snake that actually lives inside of Jason. Now, the issue with that is we go into this body jumping scenario in this movie. But I'm getting ahead of myself. The movie starts out with a young lady showing up at a cabin. We get a scene of traffic, a highway, a sign that says Crystal Lake, like a city limit sign. We get somebody that pulls up to a cabin. Lady that goes up in the cabin, highly attractive woman. I mean, she's arguably the finest woman that is in all of these Friday the 13th Jason Voorhees movies. Good God. If you watch the beginning of Jason Goes to Hell, your toxic masculinity will come out everywhere. She's a nice looking woman. She gets up there. She's getting situated. She decides to take a bath. I'm going to tell you, the theater I was in, it brought out the dogs, okay? Barking at this woman on screen. And she was worth barking at, okay? She really was. And she's getting ready to get in the bathtub, and all of a sudden, boom, lights go out. And at this point, we've already got a very creepy tone to this movie. And I was like, whoa, we're coming straight out of the gate here. This is creepy. She comes out, wraps a towel around her. She comes out. She's looking over the edge of this balcony thing down into the bottom of the cabin. She can't see anything. She turns, and Jason is standing there with a machete. Takes a swipe at her. She falls over the edge. But it's weird because you notice not only does she fall, but she kind of does a tuck and roll thing and comes up and runs out the door. And it's like, wow, that is one athletic chick. It really is. So she's running through the woods. There's a hesitation, and this is sort of things you notice after you've seen the movie a couple of times. There's a hesitation where she actually stops to confirm that Jason is behind her. And you're like, I never noticed that before, but for what's coming, it made a lot of sense. Well, she runs Jason out into this sort of open meadow that's got some overhanging trees. And when he gets there, all of a sudden, all of these spotlights cut on. And you're like, whoa, what in the hell is going on? And all of a sudden, These guys stand up and throw these black blankets, cloths, off of them. And it is a damn militarized SWAT team. Complete M16s, M60s. And they commence to firing on Jason. And they're tearing his ass up. In case you're wondering, don't worry, I'll get to Jason's design. They are firing on Jason and they're tearing his ass up. I mean, he's doing this, this, and this. And then next thing you know, one of the guys says, incoming, and you're like, incoming? Somebody has launched a rocket launcher on his ass. What's funny is it's things that make you go, this all makes a lot of sense if you're after this sumbitch. This is exactly how I would approach killing Jason. Okay? Makes sense. All right? So, he gets blown up. His head goes rolling off. His heart comes out and is laying on the ground. And his heart's actually doing a little boop, boop, boop. Stop. His heart's big, too. I mean, that sumbitch has a heart now. Now, I'll get to all the, for lack of a better term, fuckery that's coming in the story. But up till now, it has started out epically. Epically. Jason, the design of Jason Voorhees that they did is phenomenal. Kane Hodder looks huge. They have designed the hockey mask where he has been in it so long that it has begun to actually, including the straps, grow into his head and his face. Makes a lot of sense. He's had it on so long that it's actually growing into his head. Creepy stuff. And he's really malformed on top. And he's got a couple of strands of like long stringy hair. And you can tell his skin has been burnt. A la, I guess, A New Blood and some other times that he has been on fire. You can tell the hockey mask has got char on it from where it has been, shot at, caught fire, all of these things, and it makes a lot of sense. It makes a lot of sense. And then we cut away, and that's where it comes in and it says, Jason goes to hell, psht, and like a machete blood thing comes across the screen that says, The Final Friday. Awesome. I'm like, man, the first 10, 12 minutes of this is historically great. And we get in, the body's being rolled in, but at the same time, you're like, I'm somewhat confused because I come to a Jason Voorhees movie and you guys done smacked his ass in the first 10 minutes. They roll him into the coroner's office. It's kind of funny because as they're rolling him in, they pass Kane Hodder, who's playing a security guard outside of the coroner's office. Pretty funny stuff. So we get in there and the title credits are going and you cut to one of the best character actors out there that a lot of people don't know. You recognize him. His name's Richard Gant. He's an African-American gentleman. Got a real deep voice. He starred in a season of Deadwood. Was Tommy Gunn's manager in Rocky V. The Don King guy. That's Richard Gant. He was in Jason Goes to Hell as the coroner at the beginning of the movie. And he said, it's really cool. I mean, they're still playing it really cool. The music's different, but it's good. And I remember this line. He says, if you don't have blah, blah, blah clearance and you're listening to this autopsy, you're in a heap of trouble. And I was like, oh, that's dope. The delivery is so good. So good. So he's talking about the size of Jason. He's putting the body parts up there. And I mean, he puts a leg up there, and the leg is massive. And you're sitting there and you're like, how is this playing out? We're still in the beginning of the film right now. And he's looking at the heart, and he's got the scalpel, and he's kind of poking at it. And he starts looking at it funny. He gets a weird look on his face. And all of a sudden, the heart starts pumping. Boom, 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 boom. And you're like, what the F's going on here? Why is that heart pumping all of a sudden? And then all of a sudden, he picks up the heart and he eats it. And you're like, what is happening here? And there's all these like little starry things that are coming out of the body, making a really cool noise, woof, 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 flying into Gant's body, the coroner's body. And he's like freaking out, having like this incredible Hulk transformation, a la Bill Bixby and CBS TV Hulk show. And he's Jason. What? He has eaten the hell baby that was inside of Jason, goes in, and he has eaten Jason. And this is where I'm like, what? And what I will tell you is, back in the day, this played so much better with me. I was higher on this movie. Let's see, this came out in 93, so let's say even pre-2000, I was much higher on this movie. I'd have said it might have been 3 or 4 spots up from here. But over the years, the old schoolness comes out in me, and I want Jason to be Jason. I want Jason Voorhees to be Jason. And what sucks is, I look back now and I'm like, God, the opening of this movie would have been a great finale of this movie. You know, with the SWAT team and everything. But there are so many positives about this movie. There really are. I wish that body jumping narrative hadn't happened. Gant kills a guy, comes walking out of the coroner's office, is passing Kane Hodder, who's one of the security guards, and he looks at Jason. Of course, it's the coroner. He don't know it's Jason. He looks at him. He goes, man, we really nailed that fucker. He goes, he wasn't nothing but a big old pussy anyway. And then you flip over to a TV broadcast that says a body is missing and 2 security guards are dead. And it's a shot of Kane Hodder up against, like, something went through his forehead or something up against the wall. And we flip around, and there's some really, really good characters in this. John D. LeMay plays Stephen Freeman, who is married to the daughter of one Dana Kimmel. Well, Dana, we find out throughout the movie, is actually Jason Voorhees' sister. Very cool shit, okay? So, Stephen was married to the daughter. Jason is her uncle. They've got a newborn together. And John D. LeMay is great in this movie as Stephen. All he wants to do is get to his estranged wife and protect her. And he plays this part fantastically. Quality. He starred in this movie, but he's really a character actor. If he sounds familiar, he starred in Friday the 13th, the series. All 37 episodes. At least I think he was in all 37. I have never seen the series, but over the years, you just know this shit, okay? You just know it. And, yeah, I'm going to take a drink on camera. I love these podcasts. So, now you have a narrative. Dana, played by the great character actress Erin Gray from Buck Rogers, and of many, many, many different episodic television shows over the years. If you grew up in the 80s and 90s, you saw Erin Gray, you knew Buck Rogers, and you would see her in all kinds of shows. Usually your favorite episodic TV shows. Well, she plays a waitress. And she's walking through a diner, and this gentleman on my screen is the great Stephen Williams. Creighton Duke. Maybe next to Tommy Jarvis, the best non-Jason Voorhees character in all of Friday the 13th. He is a bounty hunter. He gets interviewed by a news reporter who is actually the new boyfriend of the niece of Jason. And they're interviewing him, and he's saying, Jason's not dead. Jason's on his way back to Crystal Lake right now. And the guy's like, well, how do you stop Jason? And he goes, that's only for me to know. And he says, if you want Jason dead, truly dead. Great line. I mean, his delivery, and if you're like, he looks familiar, he was on the X-Files. He was on last season's Yellowstone with Kevin Costner. He was on the ranch. I mean, Stephen Williams got to be probably 65 years old now. 68 maybe. Great character actor. So good in Jason Goes to Hell. So good. And essentially, he says, hey, here's my asking price, and I'll deliver the machete, the hockey mask, every damn thing back to you. And the newscaster is trying to be a hotshot, and he's like, for the sake of the safety of the city and blah, 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 we are prepared to put up the reward money for him to put an end to Jason. For him to be dead, truly dead. Man, good stuff, you know. Put an end for all time. I mean, just great, great stuff from Stephen Williams in this. So, Stephen ends up getting, he's going down the road. He picks up a couple of hitchhikers. He's driving out, and they're like, can you drop us off at the Crystal Lake entrance? And he's like, are you sure? And they're like, yeah, with Jason dead, we're going to go smoke some dope and have some premarital sex. They go out in the woods, and what I will tell you about this movie is if you're going to consume it for the first time, or if it's been years since you have seen it, please watch the unrated version. Because the kills look, the kills, this is a pretty gory movie in itself, but the kills are turned up a notch in the unrated version. So, Jason's coming through the woods, as you would think. Richard Gant, he's still in that other body now. Jason is a black man. There is no racism in a Friday the 13th movie. Well, in a Jason Voorhees movie. So, he's going through the woods. There's a couple having sex in a tent. He grabs some kind of like fence post thing or something. and he rams it through the woman while she's on top of the dude and splits her in half. Now, it's gory in the regular version, but in the unrated cut, you see her split like this. Good stuff. Very good stuff. Look, so much about this movie was right. So much about it was right. But as we go along in the movie, the bodies that Jason takes, they begin to break down. And he gets in confrontations, for example, with Stephen, etc., etc. And so he's in a regular body. And his body takes damage. Doesn't kill him, none of that, but it takes damage. And so he heads off to find his sister. And you might be like, why is he so worried about his sister? It's because we learn in this movie from Stephen Williams, Creighton Duke, that the only way to kill Jason is by the hands of another Voorhees. Not a bad premise. Not a bad premise. If he's going to have a supernatural swing, by the hand, through a Voorhees was he born, only through a Voorhees may he die, or something like that, was one of the lines from Creighton Duke. And there's even a knife. He knew the knife. There's a special knife. And you might be like, man, this sounds weird. It is different. For a Jason Voorhees movie, it is very different. But in a lot of ways, it works. It does. Except the blasted, the GD body jumping thing. Except that. If we didn't have that, Aaron Gray is really good in this movie. Fine acting job. John D. LeMay is phenomenal. For a horror movie, he does a great acting job in this. Creighton Duke ends up arrested because he assaults a sheriff or something. He ends up in a jail cell with Stephen. Because Stephen ends up, he hits a cop or something. And they put him in the cell next to Creighton Duke. And Creighton knows who he is. And because he wants his money, Stephen's like, how do I kill Jason? He's like, I'm not telling you. This was a great scene. He said, well, that's going to cost you. And he said, I don't think you've got the guts to pay. He's like, give me your hand. It's like, why am I giving you my hand? Just give me your hand. Creighton Duke, Stephen Williams, snaps one of the fingers on Stephen, breaks it. I'm like, damn, if he's supposed to fight Jason, you reckon he needs a... But it's a great scene, okay? Well, he breaks another one. And he tells him, finally, he's getting to the last part, and Creighton looks down at the guy's hand, he's like, he's thinking, you can see it on Creighton Duke's face, you're a tough son of a bitch. And you're really trying to get to your wife. And he's like, he looks at him and turns his head and he says, this one's on the house. It's just great. For a horror movie, great stuff. And so, through the hands of a Voorhees were you born, died, blah, blah, blah. He tells him this is what has to happen. The niece, his sister or the niece, one of the two, are the only two that can kill Jason right now. There is a newborn, but it's a newborn. Now, Jason goes through the town, essentially, wreaks havoc through 4 or 5 different bodies. It's not great. Good kills in there. Good kills. Good fights. But again, Jason is not really Jason without the hockey mask. And without the physique, the body, the we know the look. The look. I've got it on the screen. And this was a really great look for Jason, too, by the way, like I said earlier. Well, we get into the third act, and Jason's niece is told by Creighton Duke gets out of jail, escapes. He kidnaps the newborn and leaves a note for Jessica, is her name. Meet me at the Voorhees house. Pull up. Great scene. We see the Voorhees house, and it is a creepy bitch, let me tell you. You walk in, very interesting, tasty nugget that we almost got a reference to later in a future film. The Necronomicon from Evil Dead is in Jason's house. From Evil Dead 2, Army of Darkness. It's in Jason's house. And at that moment, you're like, Jason's got something to do with the Evil Dead. Well, as we know, one of the proposed sequels for Freddy vs. Jason, and it got so close to being greenlit as a movie that when they came off of it being a movie, and they've never made a sequel to Freddy vs. Jason, it ended up becoming a comic. Ash versus Freddy versus Jason. It was Bruce Campbell versus Freddy and Jason. That's, for a horror fan, that's like the greatest proposed movie in the history of movies. And it just didn't happen. It just didn't happen. They made a comic out of it. Good comic. I read it. It's good. Really good. But to know, and Bruce Campbell was going to kill Jason and Freddy. And I was like, who better than Ash Williams, for Christ's sakes? Shop smart. Shop S-Mart. So, I love Evil Dead, Army of Darkness, Evil Dead 2. So, they meet. He tosses Jessica a knife, and it transforms into some kind of weird-looking, magical-looking dagger. That's pretty corny, okay? It is, but kind of cool, all right? Jason enters the house. Him and Creighton have a confrontation. And he grabs Creighton Duke. Now, Jason has already killed his sister, and he has thrown the body down in the basement. No, he didn't. Come to think about it, the reporter stole her body. The TV anchor stole her body and put it down in the basement because he was going to do some kind of a news report and find the body down there. Something weird. Well, he has a confrontation with Creighton Duke. Jason picks him up, and far as you can tell, like, he's going after Jessica. Creighton Duke grabs some handcuffs, throws it around Jason, handcuffs himself around a heavy piece of furniture, and Jason jerks him out of those handcuffs. And it's, he delivers a great line. He's like, "Remember me, you son of a bitch." And Jason picks him up, snaps him. And you see, he does an exhale, and you think Creighton Duke is dead. Well, Adam Marcus, the director of this film, says Creighton Duke is not dead. So in Friday the 13th canon, at least related to Jason Goes to Hell, Creighton Duke lives. This was confirmed in an interview, and it's on Screen Rant. Adam Marcus, in fact, in 2018, was trying to get a Creighton Duke spin-off movie or television show greenlit with Stephen Williams. I will watch that. If it's a TV show or a movie, I will watch it. I am down for Creighton Duke, the Bounty Hunter. Now, I don't think Jason would be in it, but what Creighton Duke, he was a bounty hunter that hunted serial killers. And that was one of the great narratives of this movie. Jason was the most wanted FBI serial killer. The number one most wanted. That is so cool. You know, that's treating the character the way it should be, in a realistic way, except you went supernatural. Makes all the sense in the world for him to be the number one most hunted serial killer in the world. You know? And so, anyway, Steven shows up. Comes in with a machete, slices Jason's neck. Jason's still in another body. When he falls down on the floor, his head comes open, his neck, and that little hell baby thing comes squirreling out of there. And he falls down in the basement. And, actually, the confrontation with Creighton Duke happens after Jason's neck gets sliced open, because the hell baby falls down in the basement, and Jessica goes, Creighton, for Jason to be reborn in his form, and that's what he's trying to do, is get to a Voorhees because he can be reborn. Does it have to be through a living body? And Creighton looks at, she said, my mother's body's in the basement. And he looks up. It's a great look from Stephen Williams. Looks over at her and goes, Holy Mary, Mother of God. And you hear all this shit going on in the basement. And all of a sudden, boom, out of the floorboards, the real Jason Voorhees, hockey mask and all, comes up. And that's when him and Creighton have the confrontation. Well, Stephen is trying to punch Jason, ain't getting nowhere, knocks him out the front plate window. Jason's whipping his ass. I mean, just beating him all over the yard. Essentially. Throws him into a damn, set of monkey bars and all kinds of stuff. And I'm like, damn, that hurts. Turned it over on top of him. And Jessica comes out from behind with that dagger. Sticks Jason with it. He drops to the ground. And this is where... This is part of where the wheels fall off. All of a sudden, these arms come out of the ground. And they're arms from hell is what it's supposed to be. And they're grabbing Jason. The light is shining down from heaven, I guess, on top of Jason. And these angel spirits or something are flying into his body. And these big, gnarly-looking, weird hands are literally pulling Jason under the ground. Again, the supernatural part of this. If the hands hadn't looked so damn cheesy, it's not a terrible premise. The idea of him being drugged to hell. Not a terrible premise. Considering you've done made Jason supernatural. He's been supernatural since part 6 when he came back to life after the lightning strike. He's been a zombie. And you make him something else in this. You tie him to hell. And that's pretty cool. You tie him to a demon. You got the Necronomicon there. I mean, all of a sudden, all these cool questions are coming up in your head. And that's where the movie ends. And then we cut to a scene at the very end. And this really gentle, soothing music is playing. Kind of like you hear at the end of the original Friday the 13th. And at the end of part 3, the music is playing when the two ladies are each Alice in the first one and Dana Kimball's character in part 3 are all out in the boat in the water, soothing. And a dog walks up. And a dog is scratching at the ground. He takes a leak. You hear somebody call for the dog. He walks off. And a little sand blows through. And that hockey mask is laying there on top of the ground. And you're like, what's fixing to happen here? You know? And then all of a sudden, Freddy Krueger's claws come up out of the ground, grab the hockey mask, and drag it to hell. With the laugh. Now, was it Robert Englund's hand? No. It was Kane Hodder's. With his hand in the Freddy glove. So, Kane Hodder has played Jason and Freddy, technically speaking, in movies. So, very cool, nerdy side stuff, right? This movie made about $16 million, which is, it was made on probably about $5 million, I think, somewhere in that neighborhood. I give the movie a 5 out of 10. It's a 5 out of 10. And you might be like, damn, Rhodes, you had all these positives. I do. But in the same way I knocked A New Beginning all the way down the last, I've got to nail this movie because Jason was not in his true form in this film. He wasn't. And he was body jumping. I hated the body jumping with a passion. I hated it with a passion. It's weird because you have a lot of elements in this movie that of a 9 out of 10 or a 10 out of a 10 movie. All these cool things going on. Some good acting, some good ancillary storylines, some great character interactions for a horror movie. For a Jason movie, some great character interactions. But you got the godforsaken body jumping, and I hate it. I hate it. I go to a Jason movie to see Jason in his true form through the whole movie, through the whole film. That means something to me. That means something with me. I understand why they did what they did to a point, and in some ways it works. But again, and like I said, this movie would have been higher on my list 20 years ago. In year 2000, it would have been higher on my list. I'd have probably given this thing like a 7.5, 8 out of 10 maybe 20 years ago. But now, 5 out of 10. 4.75, 5 out of 10. I've got it as average because there's so much in this movie that is a 9 or a 10, and then I have that one thing that's a flipping 1 for me. It's a 1. The body jumping thing is a 1. So the best I can do is say this film is freaking average, which is sad, considering Steven's character is great. Stephen Williams' character, John D. LeMay is great as Stephen Friedman. Creighton Duke, played by Stephen Williams, great. Erin Gray is in it. She does a good job for a feature film, And Kane Hodder, for the times that he's actually in the hockey mask, is great. The premise of Jason being most wanted is great. The opening scene is arguably, along with the remake, one of the best opening scenes. It and the remake, along with Jason Lives, it's a top 3 of all time Jason Voorhees opening sequence. The first 10 minutes, it's that good. It's that good. But the body jumping thing is god awful. It's god awful. It doesn't. Now, does it ruin the movie? Again, 5 out of 10. 5 out of 10. And have I seen this? How many times have I seen it? 50 times, maybe. Maybe 100 times. I've seen Jason Goes to Hell a lot. I bought it on VHS as soon as it dropped. Saw it in the theater twice. Bought it on VHS. Probably watched it 20 times by the end of the first week. That's just how much I really like. And like I said, I was much higher on this movie 20 years ago. But it hasn't aged well And because the old school in me wants to see Jason through the whole movie. That's a thing. That's a thing. I'm a Jason Voorhees fan. And never will that be more prevalent than in my next movie. Because I guarantee you I'll get some, what? This is what? How low? I want Jason Voorhees in a Friday the 13th movie. If you're new to the channel, hit subscribe. I'm doing these horror podcasts now. So I cover horror. I do cover horror news. Primarily slashers, Halloween, Friday the 13th. Some other stuff like Evil Dead I will touch on this channel. Star Wars is a big deal on this channel. And conservative politics is growing this channel right now. So if you're interested in conservative politics, subscribe. If you're interested in Star Wars, I got the 411 on all of it. Peace. I'm out. Till next time. This was a long one.
King Kong in the trunk. King Kong, King Kong, King Kong.